Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed the last one. So I've got with me Dan Wiseman from the Detective Society, and today he's going to be talking about surviving the Dragon's Den, or for those of you in the States, Shark Tank, I think it is. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to Dan.
Great. Thank you very much, Tom. Hi, I'm Dan. I wear a few different hats in the games and business world. My predominant day-to-day is as a games consultant and business mentor. I also run a web design and marketing company, which I founded in 2010. But the main thing I'm here to talk about today is my digital hybrid tabletop games company called the Detective Society. Now, if you don't know what a digital hybrid is, don't worry, I will explain that. This background is relevant to see how I got to where I am today and what we're doing in our companies. So I founded the Detective Society with two friends, Joe and Tristan, in 2020. They worked in escape rooms. I was working in website design. I've got a lot of entrepreneurship background, running businesses and working with small businesses. And at that time, all of the escape rooms closed due to the lockdowns for COVID, right? So we had time on our hands. We had a big interest in like puzzle games, escape rooms, immersive experiences. So we thought we'd try our hand at kind of bringing the feeling of an escape room into people's homes. Since then, we've won several awards, including Best Digital Hybrid Game at the UK Games Expo Awards in 2022, featured in several prominent press articles, including like Christmas gift lists and things like that. And of course, an appearance on Dragon's Den, which is known as Shark Tank in the US. So in this talk, I'm going to be covering what is a digital hybrid, giving you some examples. I'll talk about some of the business hurdles that we faced. Our mission, really, which is around surviving and sustainability as a business in the games industry, fundraising, kind of out of the box thinking, some of the weird stuff that we did, which helped us, and then we'll finish with a Q&A. And of course, this is all through the lens of like what has happened to us and what has worked for us. And it might not be the same for you, but hopefully there'll be something in there that's useful in your own adventures. So what is a digital hybrid? I've always been like really passionate about gaming in all its forms. Board games, video games, escape rooms, live experience games, even game theatre. So I did a drama degree, but really not in the kind of acting world. I kind of focused on behind the scenes stuff, arts management, things like that. This was a long, long time ago. And this picture, as you can see here, this was a little project that we did where you kind of walked around an abandoned old mansion and you had to play games to progress through the different rooms. And, you know, of course, during COVID, you can't do something like that. Everyone's locked up inside. So we weren't going to be able to make a live experience. We also didn't really have a lot of programming knowledge. I've got a bit of web development behind me, and my co-founder, Joe, has dabbled in it through a computer science degree, but we're not programmers. So we settled on tabletop games. And, you know, during COVID, we can print stuff, we can post it directly to players. We're not limited in any way in that regard. But we thought, you know, it'd be a shame not to use that kind of technical skill that we had. Since I was a web designer, we thought we could incorporate some web stuff into the games, and this kind of forms the digital part of the digital hybrids. We wanted to create an experience that kind of weaved between this physical stuff that you can see on screen that players had on their kitchen table and a kind of digital world that we'd create. And this is the basis really for what is a digital hybrid experience to us. And I'll give you an example. So we do a lot of conventions and we do a lot of exhibitions, and we bring along like a demo game that we've created specifically for those events. And in the demo game, there has been a murder, and players are given this box of materials related to that murder, and they have to kind of rummage through it, and it's a bit silly and it's a bit fun. Inside the box, there's things like a photograph in a picture frame. A business card, a letter from an IT support person, a solicitor's letter. There might be some bank statements. There might be all sorts of bits and pieces like that. The sorts of stuff that a detective might have to like rummage through on someone's desk when there has been a murder to look for clues. Now, to find out who the murderer is, the players need to hack into the victim's bank account. Now, don't worry, it's not a real bank. We've created a fake one, and this is an example of it on screen. But the idea is it looks and feels as real as possible. And that's all part of making the experience feel immersive. It slowly makes you forget that you're playing a game and instead gives you that feeling of being a real detective. So you have to use the stuff in the box to figure out what the victim's bank account details are. The letter from IT support says that they'll give you a password hint, but you need to confirm your email address first. Well, the business card has the email address on it. So you're sort of slowly starting to unravel clues and progress in the kind of puzzle of this world. So you now have to message the IT support person, and we do use real messages. So in our games, you might have to send a text message or WhatsApp message. And that IT support person texts back with a password hint. And the password hint on it says something like name of pet horse and year of birth. So now you need to find the victim's pet horse and their birth year. So if you look at the photograph that I mentioned, there's a picture of the victim with a pet horse, with a horse, but there's no name, no date of birth. And then you realize that just like a real detective would examine the physical evidence as much as possible, you actually have to pull the photo frame apart out of its frame, and on the back of the photo, scribbled in handwriting, it says my 13th birthday with Jethro the horse. So now you can work out what the birth year was, you can work out the horse's name, and you use that info to get into the bank account. And I mentioned about contacting the IT support person. This is a big part of our games. The idea is to kind of enhance the realism. We've got some games even that you've got phone calls in and you phone up a voicemail and you get like a recorded message and stuff like that. And we've got pretend live broadcasts during the games of crime scenes and video messages. Back to this demo, once you've got the info, you can log in, you can see on the bank statements who has been siphoning money from the victim, and therefore you're revealing the murderer. Now, as an example of a digital hybrid game, the thing about this experience is that the physical materials are intertwined with the digital stuff. Neither can exist one without the other. It's really important because otherwise you're just playing a computer game at one moment, then a tabletop game the next. Both parts need to kind of inform each other and create experiences that jump back and forth between the two mediums. We try to make everything feel really realistic to increase the immersion. It should feel like you're doing real detective work. And there are obviously plenty of talks out there about puzzle design, and we're specifically making a digital hybrid game that is a puzzle game. So I won't talk about puzzle design because you can find that information out, but you've got to obviously take into account those rules if you're making these sorts of games. There are plenty of other examples of digital hybrid games. Chronicles of Crime on the left. This one uses augmented reality. So you like hold up your mobile phone and you scan it around a sort of a virtual room, and you can kind of see things in the room, and you scan cards that are in the game. That game is more sort of like a traditional board game in that it's got like a set of instructions and a set of rules. So if you want to play a more structured game, you can do. Our games don't have that because we're more like an escape room where you just sort of let loose in this world to kind of figure stuff out and solve it yourself. And then moving away from like digital hybrids and more towards like the live games. This is on the right hand side of your screen. It says Shadow of Spectre. This is a game by Hidden City where you actually run around the physical city solving puzzles, and you actually get given physical things, like maybe you get given a briefcase and you've got to take it somewhere, and there might be actors that you have to interact with. So, you know, that's slightly more on the kind of live experience side, but there's a little bit of physical game and digital game in there as well. Interestingly, the earliest examples of digital hybrid experiences that I could find weren't games at all. They were anti-piracy methods employed by like the old kind of big box PC games that you used to get like in the 90s. Games even as popular as Civilization had this in it, where they would ask you for a specific word from a specific line from a specific page of the big game manual that you got in the box, and you had to enter that word into the program in order to unlock the next part of the game. On the right hand side of your screen is Flashback, which had a system where it would show you this image, and you had to look in the game manual and find that image, and it would reveal like a code that you entered, and it would unlock the game. And some games had this built into their like gameplay itself rather than just an anti-piracy thing, and that was where it was really cool. Dune 2 did this, where one of the like mentats in that game was asking you a law question, and the only way you'd find out the answer to that question was by going through the book that came with the video game. And I love the idea of, you know, those, I miss the like feelies that you used to get in those big boxes that contain like maps and booklets, and you being able to use those booklets inside the actual game itself is just really cool, and I think we should definitely bring that back. Now, our first ever try at all of this was actually just before COVID hit. So we began by selling our games in pubs in London, not this pub, but just a typical pub. And back then, the idea of like solving or playing a board game in whilst having a pint wasn't kind of as popular as it is now. We've got kind of tons of board game casts now, which are doing really well, which is great to see. But back then it was a bit more novel, and we created a little kind of adventure. We printed it at home. We made it look really good. But we laminated it so that it could be reused. And every Friday or Saturday night, we would get bookings, and the bar staff would give out our game. They'd play it, and then they'd collect it back at the end. And it was sort of a bit of sort of a passive income generation for us. It was really good. And we had this kind of master plan to roll this out. And that game did some interesting things, which kind of kickstarted our journey, really. Around that time, there was a really interesting documentary on Netflix, and it was about bedroom detectives, amateur detectives, solving a real life murder over social media. And they were actually able to track down a serial killer by studying the killer's social media profiles and piecing together plenty of evidence to bring that criminal to justice. It was big on Netflix. And, you know, we wanted to combine physical stuff with that technical stuff, so we wanted to create this world for people to explore digitally as much as physically, in the same way that these amateur detectives were exploring online. And this led on to our first game, which revolved around identifying safe houses. So you get a list of safe houses in 6 different cities, and there's a suspect hiding in one of the safe houses, and you need to pinpoint where they are. You eventually get the postcodes for each safe house, but you don't know which one they're at. And at some point in the game, you are actually directed to this Twitter profile. It's still called Twitter back then. And on that Twitter profile, the suspect had foolishly posted this photograph that you can see in the bottom left of this street, with some cranes in the background and a police car. And looking at the type of police vehicle it was and some other identifying features in there, and using Google Maps, you could actually track down exactly which safe house this suspect was hiding in. So it was a really cool little puzzle, and like we was trying to use in that situation real world tools like Twitter and Google Maps in the games, so it really kind of built on the realism of the game. Of course, COVID hit, all the pubs shut, and we needed to pivot to at-home tabletop games. And that kind of leads me on to the survival part of the talk, which is about the importance of being kind of resilient, and how you can kind of think out the box sometimes. COVID was just one of many hurdles that we've faced in the last sort of 5 years. As a business mentor with a kind of a love of entrepreneurship, I've always appreciated the importance of being agile. And I believe that to be a good founder means to be a good problem solver. You've got to think sideways sometimes. And this was baked into our vision right from the start. I can remember meeting Joe and Tristan in a Nando's to talk about the idea for the Detective Society. And I said, well, if we're going to do this, we kind of want to think long term. And two talks come to mind if you've not seen these talks. So this is Failing to Fail, the Spiderweb Way, a talk by Jeff Vogel, and there's one called How to Survive in Game Dev in 11 Years, for 11 Years Without a Hit, by Jake Burkett. Now, both of these talks, these guys did a really good job of kind of talking about long-term sustainability. That they're talking about creating games, often niche games, that appeal strongly to a small audience. The games are well made, but perhaps not quite right for the mainstream. And they focus their careers on surviving, and they've been doing what they love for decades. And it's a really interesting story. One of the quotes is, "The long tail is vital to success." And we kind of really took this to heart when we began. We planned, hopefully, to sell our games forever, for as long as we can. As an entrepreneur, like from a personal perspective, like I believe that if you want to grow your own wealth, that's tied to your ability to create or acquire assets that continue to generate revenues long after you've made them. For example, buying stocks and shares is your classic example of, generating wealth for yourself. But creating games, creating products, creating services that never go out of date, that you can sell again and again and again, is another example of that. So we kind of took that ideology to heart. And we thought, if we can get enough customers to fund our first game, keep it on sale over the long term, we'll build an audience, a group of fans that will continue to buy our stuff and tell people about it. Now, the key is we're not chasing a hit. That's really important. We want it to be sustainable. And if we can make a business that allowed us to follow our passion for the long term, then it's better. If our oldest game still sells a few copies every month, and so does every other game in our catalogue, then those sales kind of take the pressure off a little bit. And fast forward to today, we've got a big mailing list. We've sold maybe 30,000 copies, and usually, touch wood, when we announce a new game on Kickstarter, we manage to get it funded each time, and we're really, 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 really grateful to our community for that. Now, apart from COVID, there were other hurdles too. I mean, COVID was great, bad at the beginning because the pub shut, then really good because everyone was at home buying board games. Then when we came out of COVID, we had no idea what like the normal level was. So we didn't know how many games to print and all that sort of stuff. So there's a huge amount of uncertainty, and that's a difficult place to be doing business in. But then we faced our next challenge, which was around the time of Brexit here in the UK, which was when Britain left the European Union. We was doing around 30% of our sales to the EU. And overnight, just like that, we lost all those sales. As a country, I don't think we really had much of a plan on how it was going to work on day one. And it instantly became prohibitively expensive for customers to buy games from us due to postage costing a lot more than the games themselves. I think pre-Brexit, we was charging £8 postage for a £30 game. Post-Brexit, it was like £40 for a £30 game. So, of course, no one's going to buy the games. And for around a year, we kind of languished without like a reliable way to get those games into Europe. We were too small to kind of open a warehouse in Europe or anything like that. And finally, the postal services caught up and were able to offer a competitive service once again. But that's not the last time that politics and decisions kind of outside of our hands would affect our business. We face a similar situation now in the USA. So a couple of weeks ago, I woke up to an email that said all our shipping companies were stopping sending anything to the USA due to the tariffs. It was like an overnight thing. We knew that we were going to have to pay more, but we didn't know it was going to kind of completely stop. And that was a real problem for us because 50% of our backers on Kickstarter, specifically Kickstarter, are in the USA. So it's a big deal for us because we're just about to launch a new Kickstarter. And we didn't really know what we was going to do. If you're interested, please follow us. We're going to be launching this in the next few weeks, and it's got dinosaurs in it, so it's super exciting. thankfully now, like a few weeks later, a few companies are starting to come on board and they're trialing like new postage services. There's a lot more red tape and more fees and all that sort of stuff, but it's sort of coming back a little bit. Now, the point I'm making here really is not to whine about these things. It doesn't do anyone any good, but to emphasize that like these sorts of hurdles are kind of par for the course when you're in business and you plan to be in business for a long time. In my sort of 15-20 years in business in some form or another, most of the challenges that I've faced have been external things, not things within my company. You know, it's not about hitting deadlines. It's not about making good games, making a good product. That stuff really should be easy because you're passionate about it. You know, we care about our products. You know, all we do all day, every day is think about how we can make a good game. So that stuff's sort of taken care of. You've got to do the work, but it's sort of taken care of. The challenges are all the other things, the external things, politics, dodgy suppliers, redundancies and layoffs, you know, changes to the laws, red tape, changes to your local policies, the economy going up, going down, going sideways, and even global pandemics. Building resilience for this stuff is easier said than done, but it is essential. I think in a kind of turbulent world, you've got to be able to kind of react and adapt. Having money in the bank obviously helps to build resilience and agility in your business, but getting money is easier said than done. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the ways that we've raised funds for our games and some of the unconventional ways that often aren't talked about. So I wrote an article recently on for a company called Immersive Experience Networks. It's more on the experiences side, but I covered things like debt financing, grant funding, investors, partnerships, crowdfunding. So if anyone's interested, please do have a read of that. The one that's probably appropriate to us is grant funding. In the UK specifically, there are loads of places to get grants, not just from government. There are loads of charitable bodies and other organisations that do grants. We were lucky to get a grant from Innovate UK last year, which helped for the goal of becoming more economically viable. They want to encourage economic development. I would encourage you to kind of gather as much data throughout the existence of your business as you can. So, you know, if you can prove your reach and, you know, reviews and number of people you've employed and how many freelancers you've worked with and all that kind of stuff, it's really useful if you're ever applying for a grant to kind of demonstrate the good that you're doing for your local economy. Applying for grants is a real pain. It can take a long time, like it might take a week full time to apply for a grant. There's a lot of paperwork. You need to really think about it as well and be a bit creative with it. And it took us like 3 or 4 attempts before we got some funding, but it is free money often. So if you're going to go down this route, I've got some top tips. Firstly, save any key info that you write to a spreadsheet so you can reuse it on future applications. Find a personal connection to the funding body. If you can like contact their support and ask for some assistance, ask questions, give them a call. If you can kind of put a face to your name, I think they have to be impartial when they're judging your application, but I think it doesn't hurt to kind of have a bit of a personal connection with the people in charge. And treat it like a job. You know, if you're going to apply for a grant, it is going to take you a week. You need to dedicate a week to it. You're not going to get grant funding from an organisation like Innovate UK just on the off chance by filling out a few forms. You're going to have to really put some effort in. So, yeah, if you've got to treat it like a grant, like a job. And you know, if you get 10, 20, 30,000 pounds to make a new project or scale up an existing one, that can be a real lifesaver. Here's a ton of places to find grants. You can look back at the video afterwards and see these. They're probably not all relevant to video games, but some of them are. So like the BFI, I think they've got a screen program now. So check those out. I would encourage everyone to like subscribe to every funding newsletter you can get your hands on. There's some really good ones out there. I get like a weekly one to my inbox, and it is like, there is so many random little pots of money everywhere that you could apply for, like £2,000 for this little thing and £5,000 for this little thing. And you know, if you've made your applying process streamlined by saving all the data, then it doesn't hurt for you to fill out those applications. Kickstarter was our main funding method, our main way of raising funds. Nearly all of our games were paid for with pre-orders on Kickstarter, and to date we've raised over £250,000 on the platform, and we use those funds to to create the first print run of the game, and we usually create extras so that we can continue to sell those games long after we fulfilled all the Kickstarter backers. I could do a whole talk on Kickstarter. There's loads of quirks to it, things that we've learned. We've done an awful lot of research into it over the years. So I'll just give you a couple of like top tips really. The campaign design is key, and when I say the design, I specifically mean like how it looks and all the intricacies of that. Like, we don't skimp on this. We spend around 3 months making a Kickstarter alone, and we pay graphic designers to make them look as good as possible. And you know, we are not perfect. It took us a long time, and we're sort of still improving now and doing things that trying to make it better all the time. But the only way to stand out on platforms like Kickstarter is to look professional, to give people faith in you that you're going to deliver on your promises. And you kind of need to have something unique about your brand and look and feel a little bit different. Otherwise, you're going to get lost in the sea of games that are out there. Kickstarter is really good at amplifying an existing community. And what I mean by that is you need some sort of momentum to get started. When we first began, we hit up every friend, every family member, every person of interest, every partner, every employee and employer we've ever worked with. And we just asked them to like follow the campaign and to pledge on day one if they can, to get us off to a strong start. And, you know, much like Steam and other storefronts, the more you sell on those platforms, the more it pushes you out to an even wider audience. Finally, on Kickstarter, always be honest, always be friendly and authentic, and be active, be an active communicator. Try and post daily on your campaign and your social media and other places to keep people updated. Where I've seen campaigns fall foul is when there's been problems and the creators just haven't been honest and haven't told their audience about what's going on and kept them up to date. Plan to do little videos, Q&As, puzzles to solve, competitions, things like that. Be active in the community. For companies like ours, we don't have the luxury of being a household name. We're small and niche, so it's better to play into that. We're not trying to show off and be a big corporate brand. We're telling people that we're just free friends who like to play games in a small, like to play games, make games, and we sign off all of our posts with our names. Being authentic, I believe, is super important, and communicating with your customers keeps everyone on side. Now, Dragon's Den is an example for us. It was of like an unconventional way of raising funds. Everyone talks about Kickstarter, they talk about grants, investors and all that sort of stuff, but no one talks about this sort of stuff. So, you know, I loved watching Dragon's Den when I was growing up. I liked seeing that inventors come up with products and trying to kind of make them a reality. And when I saw the BBC was looking for founders for the next series, I thought, why not? It kind of fit quite nicely in with where we was at with our business. The worst case scenario in my head was that we'd get a ton of exposure. I think Dragon's Den is watched by something like 2 million viewers. It's an absolutely huge show, and they've got tons of long tail again of their clips on social media, repeating over and over and over and stuff like that. So once we applied and we got offered a place on the show, we had about 6 months to prepare. And during that 6 months, I went over and over my notes again and again and again, reading the script until I absolutely knew it inside and out. And the reason for that is, like, my absolute nightmare would be like stumbling over the words or my figures and kind of getting ridiculed on national television. My business partner and I joke that as long as we don't look like fools, we'll be happy even if we don't get offered a deal. When the day finally came and we got our chance, what you may not know is that these are real pictures being done. There's no breaks, there's no cuts. You're just kind of standing in front of the dragons and telling them about your business. And we was actually talking to them for around an hour and a half, and they only show 10 minutes on the actual episode. So there's a lot that's discussed that you don't see, and it's really important, you know, to know your business inside and out, because you can't bring any notes into the den with you. Surprisingly, the dragons were really friendly. it felt like they wanted you to do well. They were trying to draw information out of you so that they had a reason to invest. And to our delight, two of the dragons made us a deal on the show, which we accepted on the show, and it was, it was a great success for us. Really enjoyed it. Now, after Dragon's Den, you go into like due diligence mode, where you work with their team to go over like your vision for the business, the financials, so on. Surprisingly, over 50% of the deals that are done on the show never actually happen. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You wouldn't buy a business yourself based on what someone says in their first meeting. You wouldn't buy a house on your first viewing. You'd want to get a survey done and all that sort of stuff. So, we wanted to make sure that we were aligned on the vision, and they needed to check all that information out. On the show, we got offered £75,000, which is what I believed that we needed to move our business along to the next stage. One of the points of conflict post-show was that the Dragons believed we needed a lot more money. And so when all was said and done, we didn't actually do the deal, but they gave us a huge amount of advice. They were really helpful, really friendly. After about a year of filming, our episode aired on TV, and we held like a watch party with all our friends and family. We booked a room in like a local pub and had it on a big screen. We hadn't seen the episode ourselves, so we were quite nervous about how we might come off on TV, but to our relief, it was like really positive. The games looked really great. In that 1 hour and a half, the whole thing was really positive, but there was one little moment where me and Stephen Bartlett had like a funny back and forth where like he didn't agree with something and I was quite adamant about it. He was like, "Are you sure?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Are you sure?" "Yeah." And that, obviously, that little 10-second segment was the bit that made it onto air, because it's the bit that makes good TV. So that's quite funny. In the 10 minutes that our pitch was on live TV, I think we sold through our website as many games as an entire Christmas month for us. So it's a really big success. It really was a way of generating exposure and revenues for us, and I really enjoyed the whole experience as well. And despite not getting the investment, it just turned out to be a good thing for us. And just to vindicate my original prediction, we recently undertook a private project that gave us the exact amount of revenue that we needed, that we asked the Dragons for. And we've been able to do the project that we were planning on doing. And in the last sort of 3 or 4 months, it's really kind of changed the entire structure of our business in a good way. So it just kind of shows you that sometimes you've got to trust your own intuition, your own vision, and kind of stick with it. Dragon's Den led to a few press things. This was some of the social media and press that we got from Dragon's Den. Being a kind of classic nerd who loves things like Lord of the Rings, I was delighted when one of the headlines had a big picture of my face with the words "Dragon Slayer" underneath it. So that was a bit of a highlight for me. So, it's a bit of a strange way of raising money. It isn't going to be in the business books that you would read, but I think we need to kind of think along those lines nowadays. And, we got a lot of press out of it. And I want to tell you a story about something that happened to us recently, which is another kind of unconventional thing that we kind of lent into. You might call this sort of thing guerrilla marketing, something like that. So bear with me. So this is a screenshot of the website of the Museum of Legends and Mythology based in Manchester. And on their website, an excerpt about its Forgotten Treasures exhibition reads, "Whilst we can't promise that this exhibition hosts the Holy Grail or the Ark of the Covenant, we can promise that it houses some legendary items that will thrill and excite. We are occasionally open on evenings for special events such as exclusive auctions or our famous lock-ins where we drink cocktails and play mass hide and seek." I don't know about you, but playing hide and seek in a museum after dark with cocktails sounds like a great business in itself to me. But when you attempt to visit the museum, this is where the address takes you. It's just an empty alleyway with no fancy building in sight. The mystery deepened when Reddit posts start appearing I work at the Manchester Visitor Centre, and someone asked us about the National Museum of Legends and Mythology, which is supposedly based in Chinatown. None of us or any tour guides we checked with had ever heard of it. I had a look around the location today and there's no sign of anything. I asked in a nearby shop and the lady said she'd been asked about it a few times recently. They have a professional looking website, but some of the language used seems a bit off for a museum. I'm assuming it's a hoax, but quite enjoying the mystery of it. Has anyone encountered it or have any idea what it's all about? And as you may have guessed, this is not a real museum. It's the setting for one of our games, and the content of the website actually holds several pieces of information that players need to solve puzzles in our game. We always try to make our games feel real, as I've said, but in this instance, maybe too real. And despite trying to block search engines from finding our websites, sometimes we still show up and people were trying to visit the museum. An influencer recently made a TikTok about the museum. We didn't know anything about it, just appeared on TikTok one day. And that TikTok gained a ton of exposure, made it into the Manchester local news. I did an interview for the BBC and all sorts. And this was all from a silly website that we created for our games. Of course, we've tweaked the website now to make it clearer that it's fictional. We don't want anyone going on adventures and spending their money traveling to Manchester when there's nothing there. But why am I telling you this story? Well, there's two reasons. First is I want to showcase really how immersive digital hybrid games can be. Too immersive in this case, felt too real. But you can kind of blur the lines between reality and your game when you combine multiple different mediums into your games. And I really like that. I want to see more of these things being created. I think we're only just scratching the surface. And as technology is changing as well with things like AR glasses and VR and all that sort of stuff, I think it's going to be an exciting 5 to 10 years. The second reason is that sticking with the theme of fundraising and building resilience and Dragon's Den, and I think these are alternative ways of kind of generating revenues or generating eyeballs on your product and on your business. In many ways, it is a form of guerrilla marketing. So this press event with the museum was for us, and we kind of lent into it and we made our own video and we went along and did the talks and stuff. So yeah, leaning into that. And the reason it's important is this is a graph of our sales, and this bump here is that hour that Dragon's Den air, just to show how that compares with the rest of the year, right? February is quite a quiet month for us, and you can see, I think sometimes as games business people, we forget. We switch off our creativity when we're thinking about the business. We pour our creative ideas into the game, but we forget that we can be creative in the ways that we actually run our company and our business. And I'm sure that if we put our mind to it, we can all come up with kind of quirky, innovative ways of raising cash, spreading the word, marketing and selling our products, not just board games, video games, experiences, shows, whatever it is. And I would encourage everyone to kind of try and think of some of these weird ideas and don't just follow the kind of standard blueprints that you get given. If you want some inspiration on that front, check out this guy. His name's Elan Lee, and he's the founder of Exploding Kittens. He's a really interesting guy. I think Exploding Kittens, they've got something like 7 out of the top 10 selling board games. They sell a board game something like every 3 minutes or something mad like that. And his start was really interesting, and they did a lot of creative ways to get attention. They went to conventions and built giant fake vending machines, and they'd throw fresh fruit out of the vending machines, and they were advertising on urinal cakes in men's toilets and all sorts of weird stuff. So check out that. He did a really good interview on this podcast called My First Million. It's episode 699 if you want to check it out. His name's Elan Lee. So just to summarize really, what I've learned. So digital hybrids are cool. Please do investigate them if you've never tried or if you've never come across them. And please think about how you can kind of have some physical stuff that goes alongside your real games, because I want to see more of that personally. For me, I will definitely buy it if you make that. It's important to develop your problem solving skills so you can be agile. So you can be agile and overcome any hurdles, which are often external hurdles. Build sustainability into your business. So that means don't chase hits, make games for the long term. We're hearing a lot at the moment about making smaller games. It was kind of the buzz phrase from Gamescom in August. Whether it can be a little bit controversial depending on where you stand. But I think the idea is really the longer that you can keep your business going, the more chance that you will have of finding success. So rather than chasing those hits, how can you kind of drag out your products, your games, your services for as long as possible? Be quirky and creative with your marketing and your fundraising. Don't just follow the set blueprints. But most of all, be authentic and always demonstrate your passion for your craft. Passion is infectious. Tell people about your stuff with joy and passion, and people will want to come along with you for the ride. That's our website, thedetectivesociety.com. If anyone wants a copy of our board games, there's a code that you can use for 15% off. I'll keep that up till the end of the month. If you want to chat with me, here's how you can get in touch with me. I'll also try and be around in the Discord, and I think we're going to have a Q&A now as well. But yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. That was very educational and also very entertaining as well.
Great.
I specifically love that. We don't want people traveling to Manchester when there's nothing there. Yeah,
there's no museum there. That's not what I meant. Don't quote me on it.
And also, you wouldn't buy a house based on the first viewing. I did.
Yeah, do you know what? I think that is what happens, isn't it? It's so bonkers that we go and view a house, and then the next time we see it is when we're moving in. But
yeah,
you got what I meant.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it kind of had to be on the first viewing because it was 500 miles away from where I was living at the time.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
So, do we have any questions from the chats? Kind of, yeah. We got one from Yannick on YouTube. He says, this varies between countries, but are grants in the UK really free money, or is it more like a loan on very friendly terms?
Yeah, it's a good question. It really varies from grant to grant. So there are tons of grants that are free money. There are tons of grants that are free money, but you've got to match it with your own money. So Innovate UK does this quite often, where they'll say, we'll give you 80% of the funding, but you need to put 20% in first of all. So there's a real scale. And yeah, can't speak for other countries, but it's a real mix. When I say free money, though, what I will say is one of the things that you don't realize, I think, when you enter into this, is the amount of work you have to put in just the kind of admin around a grant. So you have to do a lot of reporting. You have to fill out a lot of forms before, during, and after the grant. You have to have meetings with like the organization and all that sort of stuff. So you're really putting in like your own time, which you've got to obviously account a cost for. So free money to some extent.
Yeah, I'd say free money in terms of you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've got another one from YouTube. This one is from, forgive me if I butcher the name, but the incredible Hook, or is it Hauk? How long did it take to get from concept to success?
That's a good question. It depends, I would say, on your definition of success. So if you mean how long till I've retired with a yacht in the Mediterranean, it might never happen. But if you mean how long till we actually managed to launch a game and got good reviews and we're really happy with it and paid ourselves a little bit of money, probably like our first Kickstarter. We launched Kickstarter at a really good time, and these games are quite new, when everyone was locked up inside because of COVID, and we raised about £75,000 on Kickstarter, which was enough for us to make the thing and pay ourselves a little bit of money to make more things. So for us, that felt to us successful. And I think in this day and age, when we're in such like a turbulent economy and situation with the games industry in general, like just surviving to me is successful. Like if you're doing it because you're passionate and you're doing it because you care, being able to do it is success.
Is success,
like,
yeah. And so for me, I would say, success would be where you've sold enough in order to make back what you've already put out
yeah
in order to make the game. So, breaking even, that's success to me.
Yeah, and sometimes when you factor in your own time, you sort of work out an hourly rate. You realise you've barely earned anything, so you sort of have to think: do I care about that, or am I doing this because I love it? I think for us, because this has been a side project for us, and it has opened us other opportunities. For myself in consulting and other areas, and we really enjoy doing it. Success means, can we keep doing it? And I think that is how we measure it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Incredible's just come back and said, "Is this your main source of income, or is
Yeah.
it?" Oh,
Yes. Good.
cool.
No, sorry, it's not. That's a good
Oh,
question. We've kept it as a side project. For 3 of us to get
yeah,
paid, to generate huge amount. We need to be in all the game stores and like a major. It's tight on the board games. The margins are tight. So for us, we treat it as can we pay ourselves a little bit to make the game? Can we make the company sustainable? And then it opens up other things. So my business partners work in big sort of immersive experiences in central London. We've had consulting gigs. So, the two sort of feed into each other, and we have kind of backup careers a little bit.
fair enough. Yeah.
I'd love to do it full time, but I think pick
Yeah,
something
I
that's a
think a
bit
lot
more
of people
mainstream.
would enjoy doing something like that full time, but
Yeah.
obviously with the state of economies and whatnot, it's
Yeah.
quite tricky.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry, you were going to say something.
Just also if you're picking something quite niche, that can be tricky as well. I would rather have a really dedicated, hardcore, small audience than a big general audience that's a bit lukewarm to it. I think that's a
Yeah.
nice place to be. So, yeah,
No, that's fair enough. Yeah, you got your goals, and if you meet them, great. So we've got another one here, also from Yannick.
Oh yeah, I see.
How useful is Kickstarter these days for actual funding as opposed to leveraging it for marketing and whatnot?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think Kickstarter's intended purpose is probably not how it's used. Realistically, Kickstarter now is it's a pre-order shop. That's the way we kind of treat it. For us, it's slightly different because we wouldn't be able to make the game without the pre-orders.
Yeah.
So we need to do the Kickstarter, but there are big companies now that are running Kickstarters as a way to kind of generate that initial buzz, and that's slightly not the intended use for Kickstarter, but each to their own. And I think without that platform, it might cost £50,000 for us to do a print run and get it manufactured and shipped to where we are and shipped out. We just don't have that kind of money lying around, so we need to do it. But also, it's a market research tool for us because we're gauging interest really, and we know which games are a bit more interesting to our audience than others based on that.
Kind of like the wish list thing on Steam.
Yeah.
It's a way of gauging, is there enough interest for us to be able to do this?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It is the board game industry's wish list system, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's not exactly other than going on Amazon and putting something on your wish list, but that's only for stuff that's already in existence.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you could say Kickstarter is like the wish list of the board game industry.
I think it's a really
That's
good platform.
interesting.
There are some other platforms that are coming up a bit now as well. So there's a company called GameFound. There's a company called BackerKit. We used to have Indiegogo, but I think that might have been merged.
No, Indiegogo is still going.
Still going, is it? Yeah.
Still going strong. Yeah, because I've backed a micro 3D printer on there. And I mean, micro is literally only like this big. So, yeah, because I'm going to be using it for like models and things.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, lovely.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that was on Indiegogo, and that's still
Okay.
going. So
Yeah.
right, I've got a couple of questions of my own. uh, so are there any plans for you guys to, maybe do kind of like a live experience with your games?
Funnily enough, like this is where we started when we was students a long time ago. It's like we made a couple of these. There are some really good theatre companies out there that do this. So there's a company called Swamp Motel, and they made some really good stuff during lockdown where you book a slot and you pay a ticket, and you basically go on a Zoom call with actors and stuff's happening. And we played one where you was actually directing actors round an abandoned prison, and you were sort of directing them there to walkie-talkies. And there's some really cool stuff out there, but it is a whole nother like world of, it's a totally different thing from board games, because you need to have live actors, which are expensive. You need to have props and sets and lighting and all that sort of stuff. So I think we'd love to do it, but I don't know whether, like, from an economic perspective, it would make
It'd
much
be
sense
feasible for you.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's fair enough. I know you mentioned postage and whatnot being quite expensive now. Do you find that most of your player base, as it were, are UK, or are they still scattered around the globe?
It's definitely become more UK as we face these challenges. So in the beginning, it was a lot easier, a lot cheaper to get things moving around. But with those hurdles that I mentioned, it's more expensive now, and naturally, people don't want to buy stuff that costs too much in shipping. So it's more in the UK. But a Kickstarter, funny enough, is still really big in the USA. So we still sell a lot of games on there. Now, it's been about a year and a half since we did our last Kickstarter, and as I say, we're about to launch our new one. So ask me the same question in a month's time, and I'll have a better answer for you. Yeah, because it gives you really good stats on Kickstarter of where all of your backers are based. And traditionally for us, it's been sort of as much as 50% in USA. So we will find out.
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know. Do you get much in terms of like player metrics on like how they solve the mysteries, or is it more like a board game in that it's away from you? Because I was going to ask, have you ever had players solve a mystery in a way that you did not expect?
No, I don't. Not in the way that we did not expect. We've had players find bugs and stuff that we've need to, like, oh, I've clicked this button, it's given me the answer when it shouldn't have given me the answer, like things like that. Like, everyone gets those, but no, I haven't had anyone solve it in an unintended way. But what I will say is, on a metric side, is we're not particularly good at that from a game perspective. We're great at it from a business perspective. Like, we've got data about where our customers are based, but like what we want to build in is like a start and an end point, so we can track things like how long it takes players to play the game. And you can't do that with a purely physical game like Monopoly, because you don't know when they start, you don't know when it's finished. But with a digital game where they have to do something digital at the beginning and they have to do something digital at the end, you can sort of timestamp those and gather that sort of information. So we're trying to sort of slowly start to think about that for the benefit of improving the games. We've got a few games where, like, at the end it gives you like a score, or it gives you like a time, and if people ever share that information on social media, we can pick that up. Yeah, I think that's something that we want to kind of improve. It's the classic thing of, like, we're so busy making the things that we don't have the time to do the extra stuff that we'd love to put that in. It's getting easier and easier to do it now as well. So yeah, it's a good question.
No, that's cool. What else was I going to ask? That's something that I was going to ask. What's the replayability of each box?
Yeah, it's like an escape room. So once you've done it, you've done it. And that's a challenge for us, because often people, like, don't necessarily see the value in the game because they're they're buying a thing that they can only do once. But you buy an escape room that you'd only do once, right? Ticket to an escape room. So our argument is, like, if you get an 8-hour experience that's really, 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 really good, then we think that's a fair price. And thankfully, everyone that plays the game tends to agree with that. It's just trying to get them to agree with it enough at the beginning so they actually buy the game. That's the challenge.
Yeah, trying to get them interested enough to be able to say, yeah, it's worth however much the box cost.
Thankfully, after 5 years now, we've got plenty of reviews of the games, and they all sort of say that good things mainly. So that helps us a little bit with that, I would say.
Cool. Do I have any other questions? Does anyone else have any other questions?
I'm reading back through some of the chat. Someone said about playing hide and seek in the museum. I totally think someone should start that as a business.
Oh yeah, can you imagine doing that at like the Natural History Museum or the British Museum? That would be insane. I would so sign up for something like that. And then when you said about your new one coming out with dinosaurs, it was like, oh, Ash, that's one for you.
Yeah.
So our community lead, Ash, is absolutely nuts about dinos.
Okay, cool.
So
we're hoping sort of 2 or 3 weeks and it should be live, that Kickstarter. So keep an eye on our channels and stuff, and we'll be announcing it on there. But we're really excited. We've done a lot. We've sort of spent a year making the game, so we've done a lot on it, and thus far it's been really, really fun. So yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Cool. Right. So I think we're about done. Up next we have, I think it's Ash, with Danny Silvers talking about open sourcing your tech stack. That will also be on all of these channels, Twitch, YouTube, LinkedIn. And I just want to say thank you so much to Dan for joining us. And it's been really, really interesting. And I could honestly say I'm probably going to be picking up one of these boxes, if not multiple, over the next few months. So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
It's been great. So we'll catch you all in a bit. See you later.